of Equity, Race, and Cultural Diversity Initiatives. They call it, what is it, DERCDI. And so that's the position that we are creating. And as of today, we're down to 4. We had over 100 applicants. We're down to 4 folks today. They're going to make that decision of those 4 folks of who's going to be hired for that role, because we saw a huge need for that to be directed within our district for our parents and our staff members. And I know that kind of plays into what you guys are going to talk about today in supporting diversity in tech. But it's really, I think you guys will probably tell us that it's not just supporting diversity in tech, but it's supporting diversity overall throughout the whole school system. So
yeah, it's really good, Phil, that your district is taking that initiative, because when we talk about it, it's more than just hashtags. Because when you start talking about diversity, whether it is in technology, as you mentioned, in education and all aspects, what happens when the hashtag is over, when it's no longer trending on social media, when it's no longer going to move the needle for a restaurant or business to throw something up there? What are you still doing? So that's really good that y'all are putting your money where your mouth is, and creating that position and providing the support for your stakeholders. So pretty awesome.
It's interesting because we had a couple of we had a number of students address the board about 2 weeks ago that came back that were alumni and said, we didn't feel supported as students of color in our district, and we felt in some ways harassed because of it. And we want to see the district doing something to address those issues. And so, yeah, we are putting our money where our mouth is, and we're going to hire a person to start, digging in and opening that up. Before I get going and let you guys hear from you guys, I just want to tell everybody, make sure if you're tweeting and doing social media, make sure you use the hashtag TLTechLive. And please utilize the chat function in Zoom here to throw up any questions as they come. And I may be overt and interrupt one of our speakers to get a couple of those questions in there if we have to. But speakers, take it away. I don't know who's driving and who wants to go first, but I think it's Sandra.
I can't share. I can't share my screen.
We'll see. We see you now. We see Adam.
Navi, can you?
Okay, I think I got it now.
And as it's pulling up, I was go ahead and do the introductions of each, and then I'll do mine. And Sandra, you can go ahead and hop in and do your deal. My name is, as was mentioned, Adam File, Director of Technology and Media for Newton County School District down here in Covington, Georgia, also known as the Hollywood of the South. Yeah. So like if you've seen like a lot of Netflix, Disney, Disney and Hallmark Channel movies are filmed around here. If anybody watched Vampire Diaries, I never did, but that was all filmed around here and all that fun stuff.
Isn't Tyler Perry Studios around that area too?
Yeah, not too far.
Yeah.
Anytime they need a town that looks southern, they come here.
Yeah.
But that's been another point of conflict we'll talk about a little later with some of our Confederate statues, but that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, one of in where I am in Union, I'm just west of Newark Airport. So, we're a school district basically. So there was always the conversation of whether or not there is a central New Jersey, and our governor came out and said, yes, there is a thing called central New Jersey. So I'm really at the top north end of the central New Jersey community. And our district, we're primarily, we have a diversity that's unbelievable. It's fantastic. And because of that reason, I think it's a great place to work. We actually recently had the governor here that made an announcement regarding some medical things for our educators and stuff like that. So because of that, that's what we've been doing the past couple of months and stuff. And we've been preparing for back to school. We're trying to see what we're going to be doing, whether or not we're going to go completely virtually, or if we're going to be bringing kids back, if we're going to run a hybrid situation, or if we're just going to basically just bring kids back, period. So it's been a lot of work. We've been doing a lot of things. So because of that reason, we're all pretty busy right now.
All right, you want to take it away? Who's driving there?
Okay. You want to go ahead, Adam,
Yeah.
to do the first slide? Go ahead.
Yep. All right. And so, really, when we start talking about this whole conversation of equity and diversity and inclusion, this is something that I know Sandra mentioned in a podcast that we recorded a few weeks ago. You really have to be very intentional about this work. And if you don't get uncomfortable at any point in this process, then you're not doing the work the right way. Because ultimately, anytime you are dealing with this conversation, this is bigger than just curriculum. I think curriculum conversations where you're talking about using this framework or this framework, that's all business. And at the end of the day, you can walk out of the room and you're okay with that. But when you start talking about equity, diversity, and inclusion, those big words that you see there, this is going to change you at the core of your being. So after you walk out of work, you have to take this home with you. You're going to take this to the grocery store. You're going to take this to your house of worship if you go to it, if you're doing it right. And you have to definitely second guess your preconceived notions about how you interact with individuals. And this goes to even having those authentic relationships, because it's really hard to attack this issue if you aren't having those authentic relationships. So when we talk about authentic relationships, when you talk about race, color, sexual orientation, do you have individuals outside of your workspace that you have those relationships with? Are you building your skill set? Are you building your knowledge? And if you are ignorant, and I mean ignorant in a good sense, because we often throw out, oh, you're so ignorant, and that as an insult. Embrace your ignorance. And that's why I commend everyone who's here. If you are ignorant, say, yay, I'm ignorant. I love being ignorant, because that means there's more things that I need to learn.
I'm raising my hand.
There you go, Phil. But, it's the thing about it. If you are ignorant on it, the thing is, what are you going to do about that ignorance? So are you attending a session like this? Are you going to build a relationship with someone who's going to broaden your skill set, your knowledge, and give you some background on their experience as it relates to some of these words or how they are attacking these issues in their particular district? So definitely look at those opportunities to get uncomfortable, to get out of your complicit bias or implicit bias that you have, so you can definitely grow. So if you forget everything else that's said, please try to remember that, because hopefully you can walk out of this conversation feeling a little bit better and knowing you have some tools to kind of move forward with that.
As Nicole mentioned in the chat, she says, yes, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I like that.
Yeah, and you have to and right now, you want to make sure, as you are dealing with this with your students coming back in, that this doesn't get lost in the shuffle of the uncomfortableness we have with our COVID-19 situation, because we still have protests going on right now. We still have some things going out in Portland. We still have protests. Just because it's not the leading news story doesn't mean it hasn't stopped. So these things are still going on, and we're going to have our students coming back into our buildings in some cases, or assembling them virtually, and they need the skills to kind of have that conversation where they're not attacking each other. And definitely we need to also have that conversation with our teachers first and foremost, so they can be comfortable having those uncomfortable conversations with their students and avoiding bringing in their own biases in those conversations.
Yeah, and I agree with what Adam says, because the other part of it is that when it comes to the digital side of it, it's just like the definition on the slide. It says ensuring everyone has equal access to knowledge and possibility of technology. And that's one of the things that I think that is misunderstood, is that the whole idea behind digital equity and supporting diversity is ensuring not only the aspect of everyone having a device, which leads to the other, my next slide, which talks about equality versus equity. I know one of the first things I started out with was the big thing, making sure everybody had a device. But the problem that you have with that is that it does not answer the question of if the device is actually fulfilling the need of the student, or fulfilling the need of the teacher, or fulfilling the need of the community. And that's one of the things we have to make sure about, is understanding that the device alone does not answer the question about digital equity. There's so much more behind it. And the problem is right now, the issues that we're facing as a nation is that we're realizing it does not exist because there is a major digital divide. I'm quite sure everybody's heard about the homework gap issue, where we have students that either don't have a device or they don't have internet access. And because of that, this is something that, as Adam was just saying, you have to be intentional in what you're doing. It's not a matter of that, okay, now that we're one-to-one, we have satisfied the need of providing digital equity. That does not work. It doesn't work that way. There's a lot more behind it than just the device. And even there's a lot more behind it than just internet access. Digital equity encompasses quite a few more other things than just the device and the access. So those are, so go ahead.
I was just going to add to that on the same lines, you know, there's that hashtag homework gap, right? And close the homework gap. Well, I've heard just recently this week, it changed from close the homework gap to hashtag access gap. Well, I think that goes in line with what you're talking about there a little bit. It's not just a homework gap, it's an access gap.
Yeah.
Hey, Sandra, could you go ahead and put the presentation in presentation mode for us?
Okay, sorry about that. I have the wrong one up. Okay, sorry.
Good deal. Yeah.
There we go. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Oh no, it's all good. You know, we're all family here.
I know.
And so, like, the funny thing, like, you know, when we talk about this, the digital gap, it definitely was one of those things I think a lot of people became aware of when we went virtual with everything. And it's not, and this made it bigger than K-12. And I feel I heard you mention earlier about I think it was the Rahm Emanuel's quote that you utilized earlier.
Yeah, don't let a good crisis go to waste.
When we look at what happened with this situation, it definitely showed everyone, when everyone had to start working from home, the access issue that we're having. So it's bigger than just doing homework. Now you're talking about the opportunities for people to get health care. I was talking with Sandra as we were preparing for this presentation, and I had a doctor's appointment that I had to utilize a Zoom type platform and had my appointment. You know, I had to hold the camera up. The doctor wanted to look at my eye and see if everything was going okay, and then was able to diagnose me, put in my prescription, and I could go in and pick it up. I had access. I had device to where I could do that. So if we have families who don't have it, now you're talking about they don't even have health care. And when you start talking about this picture, I'm sure a lot of you've seen this photo when we start talking about difference between equality and equity. It's one of those conversations that we have, because one-to-one is simple. It's a math problem. You have 6,000 students, you need 6,000 devices. Boom, one-to-one solved. It's bigger than that. It's what gaps do we have? And so it's going to identifying these barriers that they're facing, and then giving those students or those families or the stakeholders the tools that they're needing to overcome those barriers. Because it's ultimately, yes, we can tear down the barriers, but we want to make sure individuals have the skills and the resources needed where they can achieve whatever they need to achieve. So it's, do students in our special needs areas, do they need a tablet versus getting a Chromebook? Do we need some students who need Wi-Fi access and other students don't need Wi-Fi access? So it's one of those things when we are looking at it, and if you have, and I'm going to use this example that someone gave me with equity, and I can't remember where I got it from, so this is not mine, but it's talking about children, and a lot of us are parents. But it says if you have one child that needs braces, and those of you who understands how expensive braces are, they're very expensive. So you spend $2,000-$3,000 on braces for one kid. You're not going to turn around and spend $3,000 on braces for the kid who doesn't need it, because they don't need it. But then in the same vein, you're not going to spend $3,000 on that kid on crap. You're not going to say, well, I spent $3,000 on Junior, so let me go spend $3,000 on Susie. No, you're not. You're going to get Susie whatever Susie needs. If she needs glasses later, you're going to buy that kid glasses. So equity is providing what that student needs when they need it. So you have to, one, know your students, know your population in order to fill those gaps. So it's not just providing everyone with a device, it's seeing where those gaps are and being able to fill those gaps, because now we're talking about students and families not eating if they don't have the skill set needed. Because this is the thing we say with technology and education is a way out of poverty. Are we perpetuating this whole poverty initiative? Are we perpetuating keeping these people disenfranchised, or are we going to provide them the tools and the resources to get out of their situations?
I was going to say, Adam,
Oops.
somebody put in the chat there, they were surprised at the number of employees or teachers who did not have access from home. So that's another kind of equity that we sometimes take for granted. Just because they're a teacher, they should have internet access or they should have all this stuff, but that's not necessarily the case. We're assuming at that point.
Yeah, because it
Yeah,
came
and
up with we had people who were talking about the amount of money they were paying for their data, and I'm happy a lot of the providers took off the data caps, because if they didn't, now you're telling people, hey, we want you to use your high-speed internet at home that only give you so many gigs to do work. So afterwards, you can't have Netflix and chill. People want to Netflix and chill too. So are we talking about now we need to pay people, teachers, give them a stipend for internet if we're expecting them to work from home? So what does that look like?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because that was one of the things that I actually had to deal with, is that realizing that as Phil said, I didn't realize how many teachers really had that issue. And then the problem is that we had distributed the devices for the kids. So now it was like, what do we have available that we could give to our professional staff? And that became a little bit of an issue because I started pulling things from all over the place, just trying to get teachers on board. One good thing, I had enough hotspots available to make loaners to the professional staff. But that was one of the things that I didn't anticipate, was how many teachers or even other support staff members. Like one of the things was secretaries. Some of our secretaries, they didn't have a device that they would be able to do. Then you land up with the other issue, which was the security. Okay, do you give them access to the payroll system? Do you give them access to this and everything else? Do you give them access on their personal devices in order to access this? Or do you give them a device that has the ability to do it? So these are just some of the things that I had to deal with when it came up to the entire closing down of the school district. And as you're saying, Phil, you don't realize the inequity sometimes from that point of view, but it's something that's real. And especially myself as being a director of technology, I have to take into consideration everyone that's actually a part of our school community. So that's just one of those things that I know that I had to face, and I'm working on it right now in my school district for the coming school year. One of the things I think is also important, and I know most people know that this is one of my pet passions, is about the whole idea about females getting into the field of technology. And as we're talking about diversity, the whole idea is not only the females, but the other aspects of it is the minority groups not being able to be in these fields, because one of the things we do realize is that there is a deficit. There is an actual deficit on exactly different minority groups and different, females being in the field of technology and being in the field of engineering and that type of thing. So this was an actual picture that someone had shared with me, and I was like, this is absolutely wonderful, because as you can see, Marie Curie is also in this picture right there with Albert, with other scientists. So, it's something I think, is very important for us to talk about when it comes to diversity and equity. Go ahead.
And Sandra, I'm sure you don't have any pictures at events where you are Marie Curie in the pictures. I'm sure you don't have any that way, because I know I don't have any. I've never been at any event, and I've been the one person in the photo looking like Get Out. That's never happened whatsoever. But
it happens all the time.
And that's one of those things where, and here is to my my white colleagues that are on the line, and this is one of those things that we're talking about, the diversity and equity. So you have to call it what it is. So to my white colleagues on this chat as well, you have to be the ones who notice it as well. To the males who are on here, as you mentioned, you have to notice it, and because we are the ones that have to make the change. The ones who are in the positions of power to make the change. Men have to be aware of that and make the change.
It's not just noticing it, Adam. It's being purposefully noticing it, putting that on the agenda.
Yes, you have to have allies in this work, and it's you can't ask the person who's suffering from the illness to come up with their own cure. We are dealing with the side effects of that. So the people who are in the positions of power need to look at what structures have we put in place to cause this picture that was taken in 1927 to still be a picture that could be taken today. There's certain things that are in place that continually allow this to happen. You could, whether you take it from, I think a lot of states, you could probably take the superintendents, and that photo would probably look similar if you looked at states and superintendents. I know here in Georgia, even if you look at our high schools, for example, high schools are the higher paying principal positions because it's like a 12-month kind of positions. You're going to have more male high school principals and female principals, and oftentimes those are the ones who are now getting the jobs to become superintendents. It's kind of like that pipeline. And just like we look at technology directors, so there's a lot of individuals who get the instructional technology coordinator positions who are women and people of color, but very rarely are they given the opportunities to become that CTO, CIO, tech director, whatever that case may be. So what are these systems that are currently in place that are keeping them from breaking through that glass ceiling and getting those leadership positions? And not only because of the diversity hire, but we need to have a diverse group of voices in the room. As you were saying, the problems that we have with connectivity, and if you have different perspectives in those rooms, you're getting different solutions to these problems that are existing. So that's really, our strength is in our diversity as a country.
Yeah.
So we really need to promote as much diverse voices as we can. So that's one thing I do commend Tech and Learning for allowing this conversation to happen.
Yeah.
Because a lot of folks will shy away from that kind of conversation.
Yeah, and the whole idea also behind it is that the thing is that there's a whole population throughout the entire world that's not contributing to the whole idea of the technology and engineering, and that's a knowledge base that's missing. So in other words, what you're not really using the potential of, every mind or every person that wants to get involved in this type of thing or should get involved in this type of thing. And the thing about it is that, as Adam talked about earlier in the earlier slides, you do have to be intentional. And one of the things that, as we go through this presentation, I'll talk a little bit about some of the things I've been doing in my school district, and Adam will also talk about some of the things he's been doing in order to, support diversity in the field. This is a slide that talks, it's very appropriate to right now because it is talking about 2020. And one of the things is that, and I'm quite sure everybody's realizing that this is something that's so true to today because everybody's doing remote, some sort of remote, whether it's remote learning, remote workforce, everybody's doing consulting, that type of thing. Everything is being done online. And right now, the biggest thing is we have all these jobs that are going to be out there, but at the same time, we don't have enough people to fulfill the requirement for these positions. And that's the reason why it's so important to encourage other diverse groups to be part of this conversation and being part of this, these technical aspects of it, because we know that, if we don't step into and actually prepare our students for this information age that we are presently in, we're going to have so many jobs available open and we won't be able to fulfill the requirements of those positions. So it's whether a job or it could be your own business. Who knows? I could be having the next Bill Gates, or Stephen Jobs right here in my high school or actually at my elementary level. And I want to be able to support, as many kids as possible to get into positions to do these type of things. Maybe it may not be an Apple, but it may be something else that comes along that is even going to be, more productive and more able to contribute to our climate and to our culture today. So that's the type of thing that I'm looking to do for my students in my school district and actually anywhere in the United States. And that's why it's great to be here to talk with people from Tech and Learning to talk about these things, because we have the capability of being able to do something, but also to hear others. So we need to be able to hear what others also have to say.
Yep. Because with that being said, I've heard a few people say post-COVID, guys, this is not post-COVID. We're still going through this. So I think we need to talk about BC, which is basically before COVID. and where we are now, which is DC during COVID. So this is where we are. We're during COVID, and this may last another 20 years. I don't know, but like as I said earlier, we're not going back. But if we continue to skip over that gap that we have, we're going to have a large segment of students that are going to fall further and further behind. And let's be honest, those are going to be our impoverished students. Those are going to be our students of color. They're going to fall further behind, and they will miss out on all those opportunities.
I think you bring up a good point too, Adam, because of the as far as post-COVID, DC during COVID and AC after COVID. You know, a lot of the students of color and people of color are being affected by COVID at a completely different rate, and so actually a harsher rate, if you will. So that's just it's going to be a contributing factor right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a survey was done in New Jersey by the State Department, and these are some of the school districts that participated regarding the whole idea of computer science. And I'm going to just show you a little bit of data that's regarding it, right? So as you can see, this is the enrollment of students actually over the past 3 years who are enrolled in doing computer science, okay? And as you can see, you know, it's so far, it looks like it's really kind of decreasing more or less, okay? So, and then if you look at this other one, okay, this is talking about, you know, underrepresented minorities. So taking these type of classes over the past 3 years, okay? Then if you go further, and then if you look at the amount of females that are also taking it, as you can see, there is a disparity taking place over the past 3 years. And one of the things that I actually am in a PLC with Kane University, and several of us actually decided to, from our actual school districts, there are a few of us that actually went and got our data from our student information systems, finding out how many kids, how many minority students were in the computer science classes that are actually taking it right now, and how many kids, basically females, were in it. And it was unbelievable because as diverse as my school district is, I'll be honest with you, we had one female. One female taking computer science classes. So that was kind of interesting. And I mean, just to let you know, most of you who have been in New Jersey, we have vast differences in economic levels according to your zip code kind of thing around here. So because of that, what happens is that it's kind of interesting because it's also prevalent in other school districts. So this is not something like saying because my school district is diverse and we only had one female student. This is something that's overall seen everywhere across the state. And I'm quite sure everybody knows it's also prevalent across the entire nation. So because of that, I think it's important for us to realize that there is a deficit. And as educators, we need to try and look at different solutions, or even just have these people at our table to have the conversation. It's like, how can I support you to make sure that you're able to be a part of this, and that you would be interested in going into the technology, engineering type fields for, you know, when you leave either leave high school or you do college or career.
Sandra,
So
I was going to say you have to be intentional at looking at the data and seeing the data, seeing what you're showing us right here on the screen, and then doing something about it. I think, Adam, didn't you guys initiate a Girls Who Code? I think it was Black Girls Who Code, if I'm not mistaken, in your school district, which is a way of being intentional at addressing these issues.
Yep, that's coming right up.
Okay, so, go ahead.
And so with
go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, and so with the barriers. And so
I did not see the slides ahead of time either. So,
and so when we have this conversation, it's like, you know, you have to be intentional about the barriers. I mean, if there's a big hole that you have to jump over and you're walking, you have to say, that's a big freaking hole, and I need to run and jump over this hole. You can't just say, oh, there's a hole there, or there's an obstacle in my way. No, you need to know what that obstacle is so you can put a solution in place to overcome that obstacle. And so when you're starting to have this conversation, when you look at your data, then you figure out what barriers that you have. And these barriers are just some that we kind of pull that are common that we kind of noticed. Some could be unique to your particular area, whether it's some geographical barriers that you may have with the connectivity, or whether it's some poverty issues, or whether it's a language barrier with your community. You have to figure out what those barriers are and then be intentional. As I said, be intentional about that work to move forward. So when you start talking about if you're still doing a BYOD program, what kind of barriers are those that you're going to have? Are your kids who do have devices, are they bringing in some of the basement level Android devices running, Cookie Crisp or whatever the operating system is? What do you have there? You're one-to-one, are you in a situation where you just did the math problem? You went and bought the cheapest device and gave your kid devices and you kept rolling with it. We're talking about internet access, connectivity. And when we start talking about this, how much, what's your bandwidth that these kids are using? Because right now in 2020, everything is streamed. This conference that we're doing right now is going to be on Zoom. Kids are watching YouTube. You're talking about streaming into some classrooms that we're talking about doing in my district with cameras. So, what kind of data speeds do they have? And the lack of opportunity are they not seeing it? Because it's kind of hard to be what you can't see in this whole conversation. Right. So are they seeing these things? Are they seeing people who look like them? When I was in Kansas City in a high poverty, urban, 80% African-American community, we asked our kids, what's a scientist? And one of the kids said, oh, dead and white. And everybody started laughing about it, but he was serious. And then we looked around the pictures we had in the room, and it looked like that 1927 picture. And this was a predominantly black school, and the pictures that they put up were a bunch of old white guys. And so the kids never thought they could be that, because that's what they saw. They saw Albert Einstein, that was, Stephen Hawking, those are the pictures that they saw. The guy was like, okay, either I'm going to be dead or in a wheelchair. So those are the things that they saw. And then we started talking about parent background knowledge. What do your parents know? What have their exposure been? So can we increase those gaps that we have there and fill those in to kind of get those students working and moving in the right direction? So one of the things, and you kind of segue to this, that we talked about was supporting girls in the area of technology.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
You start.
Oh, no,
you start. Go ahead.
No, these are yours. You go ahead.
Oh, yeah. All right, no problem. All right. So one of the things we talked about supporting girls, and one of the things that I started doing was actually started looking into different programs that I could invite girls to participate, but also, get involved with, these entities, seeing where we could get girls involved in. So NCWIT is the National Center for Women and Informational Technology. And one of the things that we did was I actually had a female computer science teacher, and between herself and one of our students, they applied for a grant. And then what they did was they actually had a summer program for the middle school female students to come in and learn about coding and doing different things with coding and some robotics and stuff like that. So those are all those programs that are available. There's a major conference that takes place that these girls can attend. There's the IBM group, there's the Cisco group, and the Microsoft group. There's so many different things out there that are available to encourage females to be a part of the entire process, and being understanding that, okay, you can be involved in this. And it's funny how Adam was talking about the exposure part of it, is that exposing the girls to this type of thing, and even if it's not just girls, but just exposing kids to these different type of programs, it gives them the ability to understand that, whoa, I can really do this. Yeah. I can really, I really like science. I really like these type of things, and maybe I should do it. It's funny because one of the things that, everybody thinks it's weird to see a mechanic who comes from underneath a car being a female. Well, I can tell you, my father encouraged my sister, who's actually a trained mechanic and actually did her training in the U.S. Army. And when she went to war and all those different things, she was the one that was fixing the Humvees. She was the one putting the generators together. She was one of those people. So, okay, I grew up with that, with my father doing that type of thing. That's the thing. Sometimes that's not encouraged by some families, okay, due to cultural differences and that type of thing. So the only thing you can do is when they come to school is show them that they have these things are also open to them as girls, but also understand that, you know, these are different things they can do. My own son is an actual CTO for a software company over in Portland, Oregon. It wasn't until he came to me, and this was like way back in the 1990s and stuff like that, I started encouraging him, and I told him, listen, you're going to take computer science. And he hated me for the first semester in ninth grade because he said, I hate this class, I hate it. Then all of a sudden he fell in love with it. And now, I mean, he has an engineering, I mean, he actually is a software engineer. So he does coding and everything else. And, you know, what happened? It's because I took the initiative to introduce this to my son. And I said, this is what you can do. And just to let you know, I'm quite sure everybody realizes this, you know, my family is African-American. So because of that reason, it's not something that's common to see that type of thing. And we need to, as a school, bring these forward for our kids and for our girls and for our African-American community. So one of the things I did was, this is actually a female engineer that works with Cisco Engineering. And I invited her to come in and speak to the students. I know most of the times you see the pictures, there's a lot of males in there, but there were females. I just happened to be where I was standing in the picture, ended up taking a lot of guys, a lot of our male students. But as you can see, there's a mixture of, you know, male students inside the group. And that was one of the things, because just to let you know, this class only had 2 girls that found out taking the Cisco Academy class. And she was actually only speaking to 2 girls in this group. So.
But the good thing with that one is the guys are still seeing that a woman can serve in that role. And so it breaks their own stereotypes. So then they're not in the workplace or whatever, when they see a woman in that position, it's not like, you're a girl and you know computers? That's amazing.
Yeah.
Are you a unicorn too?
Yeah, I actually have a personal friend of mine. She's actually I think she's the CTO. She's the CTO for Credit Suisse. And she's an amazing lady. She's actually from Singapore. And she and I have had this discussion all the time. Actually, it's great to talk to her because she encourages me when I feel discouraged, getting caught in a room where I'm the only female and the only minority female in a room with a bunch of males. And, you know, things can get a little haywire there, but we won't go into that. But let's talk about girls who code. Go ahead, Adam.
All right, so you have multiple organizations out there that you can utilize to kind of support if you're looking at what can you do in your area. One of them is Black Girls Code. Another one is Girls That Code. And what we've done within my district, we made our own internal mini conference with our girls. And this didn't cost the district one dime. We actually worked through our partners, because people were like, oh, you can't do something just for girls because Title IX. I say, no. Mm-hmm. This was all done through sponsors. When we told them what we were thinking about doing, so this happened during the school day, we brought in about 300 girls that came in here. The name of ours was Inspire Her. Code Like a Girl, and as you can see, they were brought in. They got a chance to make their own. We used Book Creator. They created their own stories. They coded. They got a chance to really just talk. We brought in some girls from Spelman, which is an all-girls college in the Metro Atlanta area, and they got a chance to talk to female programmers of all backgrounds. So it was really amazing. And the really cool thing about it was the girls were looking at the students, and they were a few years older than them in some cases. When we had our high school kids in there, and they were saying, oh yeah, we're doing this, and I'm making X amount of dollars, and yeah, this company wants me to work with them, or work with this record label to create a new source code for their app. And they were just so amazed in seeing that. So it was one of those things where I wasn't even a part of it. I stepped back. I led my instructional team, which I have some very strong females in that role. They were like, Adam, you can't talk. I'm like, fine. And so they sent me to the back, because I wanted also for the girls to see that this could be led by a woman running the show. So I definitely stepped back and got out of the way of that and let them do that.
Yeah.
This is tremendous. We are down to the last 5 minutes of our session here, just so you guys know. And one of the questions that came up in the chat, and I'd like to hear you guys, maybe you can close on this idea, and I think it goes along with the providing for digital equity. But the question was, do you think not being in school, which is what we're all dealing with here, will make it harder to have an impact on addressing equity issues?
I don't think it does. The reason why I don't think it does is because one of the things is that you have to just provide the opportunity. You know, the thing is that, okay, fine. They're not in school, so they may not experience the whole idea of being around, you know, a collaborative situation or being around their own classmates or whatever it is. But it's not impossible to do this because like we're doing right now, there's web conferencing, there's, you know, there's webinars kids can attend, or there are certain things that we could be having the same conversation with a bunch of students online talking about this kind of thing. I've actually invited my son. He actually did something for me one time. I invited him. He was actually in Portland, Oregon, and I invited him to speak to the computer science students here in the school district. And it was just him talking to the kids because I actually stepped back because, you know, I talk to him all the time. Well, kind of. But anyhow, you know, it's one of those things I didn't need to, you know, be involved in it. I just said, hey, time, you available? And, you know, can you do this? And that's what he did. He spoke to them. And it was really eye-opening for a lot of the kids because to see a young African-American man be in charge of so many engineers, he travels the world, what he does for a living, explaining the multi-billion-dollar company he works for and how he, you know, what he's doing. I think it opened the eyes to the kids to saying, wait a minute, I can do this too. And that's one of the things that I think is important is being able to provide those type of things. The Cisco Academy and stuff like that right now is being done online. You know, you can do the Oracle Academy, you can do the Cisco Academy, you can do the Microsoft training. All that stuff can be done online. You don't really need to be inside a room. But as long as the teacher brings all the kids together so they can actually collaborate and be able to speak to each other, I don't see that being that you're separated the ability to do it. And if not, it may be even better because now you can actually communicate with people from all over the world compared to trying to bring somebody from Japan over here. You got to pay for their ticket, whatever it is. Now you just do it via Zoom, Google Meets, WebEx, whatever it is that you're using. So I don't see it as being something that as a barrier.
Yeah, I concur. I mean, once we get past if you just hop to that one slide real quick, Sandra, you have with the connectivity options, the hotspots and things of that nature that we have.
Hold on, let me find
a couple slides down. Yeah,
here.
You know, yeah. Once we get to the part where, and we're already having the larger conversation about connectivity, I think we have changed the mindset where people know that they can plug in and learn a lot. And as Sandra mentioned, there's easier, now people are more open to get connected and have a meeting where you could bring in these various voices that before you'd have to spend a lot of money to get somebody to come in and talk to a group of people and figure it all out, the logistics out. Now you could have, hey, tomorrow at 6 p.m. we're going to have an engineer speaking to you. We're going to have this person, that person. So once we get people connected and having opportunities, whether it's MiFis with T-Mobile, buses, parking lots, whatever the case may be, it does open us up for more opportunities. And right now we are at a tipping point in our country where people are listening to, and they're understanding that we can do better, we know better, we have to do better. And so I think I challenge all of you to take advantage of this opportunity that we have right now as a country, because where are you going to be when you talk to your kids, your grandkids, your great-grandkids, where they're asking you, back in 2020 when we had this cultural revolution, what did you do? And you want to be able to have a story to tell them and not say, well, I know this guy Phil, he did some good stuff. No, you need to be able to tell them what you did to move the needle in your space. And that's the last thing I want to leave you with.
I think the biggest barrier we all need to break through is the barrier of assumptions. Because we're all, you know, I'm sure, you know, tons of people in the corporate world assumed that it was going to be easy to teach kids, you know, remotely or whatever. And I think we all know that assumption was absolutely incorrect. So let's break through assumptions. Thank you very much for both of you guys. I said guys, both of our panelists, I should say. Sandra,
sexist, I tell you.
Sandra and Adam, thank you so much. And,
I've gotten so used to that now.
Well, I gotta be intentional. I gotta be intentional and say our panelists, our wonderful panelists, thank you so much. We could have a whole conference on just this topic and aspects of this topic. we did it in 45 minutes. But
Stay
obviously-
tuned. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
There's something coming. There's
That's
something
awesome.
coming. Right, Christine?
Yes, I just want to chime in because we would love to host something like this. So Adam and I are chatting, and anybody else in the call, reach out to me, christine.weiser@futurenet.com, and I would love to see a longer conversation about this. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we need it. We need it. We
I
need to have
agree.
this conversation because we can't leave things. Okay, I'm getting ready to retire. Somebody to take my place.
Yeah.
And because of that, I would like it to be another female rather than, you know what I mean? So anyhow,
Virtual summit on diversity there and equity. So that's awesome. And thank you very much, panelists. Thank you, everybody else, with your questions. The
Thank
resources are all going to be available right after this recording, and this recording will be available at the end of the day, I should say. Possibly this weekend, you'll have access to this recording and then all the resources. Thank you, for all of you, for sharing the different links you've shared. Those are incredible. As I mentioned before, Adam and Carl Hooker, Adam File are doing a wonderful podcast. I'm giving them a plug on that because that is also going into these areas as well. And thank you, Tech and Learning. Make sure you use the hashtag TL Tech Live as you're talking and on social media and bragging about all the wonderful things you learned about today. Make sure you use that hashtag, of course, where it can all be found here at TL Tech and Learning Leadership Summit. Thank you very much. And look forward to seeing you all in the next sessions, whether it be in this room. I'm actually moderating in the third room in the next session, so I'll have to leave this room here in a second. But you know, if you check your schedule, you might be able to stay right here for our next panelists for the next hour. So be ready and be ready to learn.
Yeah, and visit the conference hub as well. I think we put the chat in here too. So thank you, everybody.